We're moving now.
Today we're turning a sheet of glass into a 20-sided hyperdiamond. So,
What?
let's get started.
Whoa!
We're going to begin this project by drawing out a grid on this single sheet of glass. Each square on this grid is going to represent one layer of the sculpture that we're going to eventually stack and glue together.
I'm gonna eat some pita chips.
Now that we have the grid drawn out, it's time to begin cutting apart these squares. To do this, we're going to set up a guide and then score the glass using a glass cutter, and then we're going to split it in half with a tool called a runner.
You can have some. Here you go.
Once all the rows have been split, it's time to start cutting apart every individual square. Typically at this point, I take these squares and stack them together and grind the shape out of that, but what I'm going to do this time is create a template of a decagon, and I'm going to use this as a template to cut out the squares. This way it'll be a lot easier for us to grind the glass into a 20-sided diamond later on.
Whoa.
With a template drawn on the square, it's time to start trimming the sides of the glass.
Lobster chip, what the fuck? No, but it's sea salt.
We're going to repeat this process with every square until we have a giant tower of glass.
What the heck?
With all the glass cut, it's time to begin the cleaning and the gluing. We're going to start by mixing up a glue called Hextol. It's a type of epoxy that we use a lot in the glass industry. It's very optically clear and it works really well with gluing glass to glass. But before we use it, we're going to put it in a vacuum chamber to pull out any air bubbles.
Okay.
While the Hextol is degassing, we're going to go ahead and clean every sheet that we just cut. Now that we have all the glass nice and clean, it's time to begin the gluing. So we're going to start by placing all the glass on these paper towels, that way it's in arm's reach. With everything prepared, we're going to start with the largest layer of glass first. We're going to place that down on a mat, and then we're going to pour some glue onto the very first layer. Then we're going to take the second sheet and squish it on top. When I'm pressing the glass together, I have to be very careful because if I go too quick, I'll trap air bubbles in between and that'll show up in the final product. We're going to repeat the gluing until we have a bunch of little stacks of glass. Then we're going to take each stack and clean it. This time I'm going to be using alcohol and a razor blade to scrape off any dirt and debris. Once all the stacks are cleaned, we're going to glue them together once more until we create a little tower of glass. Finally, once the two stacks are glued together, we're then going to glue those stacks on top of one another, creating our blank. After letting the glue cure for about a week or so, we are left with this big chunk of glass. As you can see, it has some really cool rainbow effects happening inside of it. So now we're going to take this glass over to the flat lap and we're going to start grinding all the faces down until we have a 20-sided diamond. The first thing we have to do is grind away all these rough edges until the sides are completely flat. So we're going to be using a really coarse diamond pad to do a lot of the initial grinding. It's important to be very careful and go slow because if I accidentally slip, I could ruin the entire shape.
Oh my god, what if he drops
This here is the current state of the 20-sided diamond. It's a little sloppy. The sides are definitely not even. I have to bring these sides down a little lower so it gets to this mark right there, just below the 17, just about right there. Since it's mostly flat, we're going to switch down to a lower grit pad. That way it grinds the glass a bit slower and I'll have a bit more control over what I'm doing. So I'm going to quickly mark all the areas that I want to grind down on the diamond, and then we'll get back to work. After regrinding all the faces and making the adjustments, we now have our 20-sided diamond. The edges here are a little bit off, but they're pretty darn close. The tip on both the sides are pretty centered as well. And when you rotate the diamond
That
from the
looks like
side,
something out of a
everything looks pretty
cartoon.
on center. Of course, it's done by hand, so it's going to be a little bit off, but it's not too bad. At this point, it's time for us to get rid of all the scratches that you see on the surface. To do that, we're going to go through all these different resin bond pads until we get to the red one here, which is 600 grit. All the faces have been brought up to a 600 grit finish, but there's currently some chips along the edge of the diamond, so we're gonna bevel the entire edge of the diamond and then we can move on to polishing. With all the grinding and polishing done,
it's
it's
so
time to
shiny
sign
now.
it. We'll finish by giving it one final cleaning and inspection, and now the artwork is complete.
Whoa.
I'm really happy with the
That
way
is
this
so
one turned out.
cool.
The colors inside the glass are really, really cool. Of course, if you enjoyed the video and you want to see more art like this, then be sure to subscribe. And thanks for your time.
Wow. That was pretty.